Okay, once you have your pattern printed on your final worksheet drawing, remember that you wanted to leave this as soft and light as possible because you're going to be filling this with color as a final assignment. This page is the final drawing, so do not fold this, do not wrinkle it up, leave it nice and flat in between two pages of your sketchbook. It might not fit in the pocket of your sketchbook, but before we color this, you need to make a plan on what colors you're going to work with. So you want to look at your notes that we took about color theory. The requirement for this assignment, which is printed on the rubric, it says a specific color scheme was demonstrated in the coloring, and the pattern is still visible after the coloring. Then it says student demonstrated value by changing their hand pressure or blending colors together. Coloring is neat and the paper is not wrinkled or folded. So those are what we want to think about in terms of craftsmanship. So the first thing I would do is go to your notes, and I would decide which color scheme or color family you want to work with for this assignment. You might decide to work with your favorite color. So if your favorite color is blue, then I would identify what color schemes blue could fit into. You could work with blue, yellow, and red for primary colors. You could work with a blue-green or a blue-violet as a tertiary color. If you want to do all the blues, then you could do analogous because they're next to each other. Blue also fits into a cool color scheme. You could do lights and darks of blues, and that would be monochromatic. So the first thing you have to do is make the plan of what the color scheme is. Once you have that figured out, then you need to look at your color pencil choices to determine which colors you have available. So if I know I want to work with blue, then I'm going to pull out all the blue colored pencils that I have. This one is kind of like a blue-green. That would work. So I know that if I'm just going to do blues, then these are the 4 pencils I could use to work with. However, we also learned about monochromatic and how you add black, gray, or white to change the tint, shade, or tone of the color. So I could introduce black, gray, and white into my color scheme as well if I want to. If I'm going to do a complementary color scheme, then I would just be using blue and orange for that. So if I decide I want to do complementary, I could keep all my shades of blues, but then I could introduce the 2 different oranges as an option. And this is the one that I'm going to work with for my final. So once I've got that figured out, I'm going to start with my practice rough draft first to decide how do I want to color this to create my pattern. So maybe I want my blues to be the lines and shapes, and maybe the background pieces are going to be orange. So I'm going to practice that on my rough draft. Maybe I begin by starting to shade in my orange in the background. When you do your coloring, you want to make sure it's smooth and neat. You're overlapping. I'm going back and forth to make it nice and smooth and solid. I'm also paying attention to keep it inside the lines. The key to successful coloring, make sure your pencils are sharp. Don't use a dull pencil while you're coloring. And the reason is because if you have a dull pencil, I don't have one in front of me right now, but if you see that the wood casing around the pencil is now dragging on the paper, all you're doing is leaving scratch marks on the surface of your paper that aren't going to go away. So keep them pencils nice and sharp. Alright, so maybe I began by coloring in all my background pieces orange. Then I'm going to start to play around with my blue options inside the shapes that I drew. Okay, so now that my orange is done, now I'm going to figure out how I want to work with the blue. A part of the grade says that You practice creating value by changing the pressure with your hand, or you blended colors together. So maybe I want mine to fade from the light blue to this blue-green. So maybe my designs are going to start out light blue here and light blue here, but then they're going to turn into the blue-green. So I'm going to do blue-green on the opposite end. We practiced this on one of our bell ringers where we blended two different colors together. Now, this design might not blend because this line is overlapping it, but here I could get these two to blend, where I'm going to color a little bit of the blue-green over into that light blue so it gradually turns into the blue-green. Then I'm thinking about contrast, where I have lights and darks. So now maybe this is going to be dark blue behind it. I can change my hand pressure. I can press really, really hard to get a bold color. I could adjust my hand pressure to get a softer color. So now I'm going to change my hand pressure here, and it's going to start to turn to a soft blue. And the piece that I'm coloring is my original unit of design. This was my beginning drawing. I flipped it to create the pattern. So I'm just practicing in the half that was my original drawing. So now I have to figure out what I'm going to do with this color, and maybe I use my third type of blue over here. Okay, so this might be my plan. Okay, if this is my plan, I want to keep my pattern consistent through the entire design. So whatever I drew on this one, I have to repeat it on this one. So I know that my orange is going to fill all the background. And if I wanted to do value change in the background, I could. If I wanted my orange to fade into another version of orange, I could do that. But I'm just going to keep it solid. Okay, once I have this background colored, then I'm going to start to work on my blue lines exactly how I planned it above. But I have to think in reverse. Okay, so I started out light blue in the corner here. Then it switched to blue-green on the opposite ends. These mixed. This was blue-green, or this teal. Then I used my darkest blue and I pressed hard. And then I changed my hand pressure to soft, light blue hand pressure on this side. Then I used my third blue in this area. So you need to practice. Figure out what that plan's going to be on your rough draft first. If you color it and you're like, yep, I don't like that, then all you need to do, take your tracing paper, turn to an empty page in your sketchbook, print that design on your sketchbook, and then try a different color scheme. Print it 2, 3, 4 times, however many times you need to practice until you figure out the color combination that you want for your final. So once you've got that determined, then you're ready to move on to coloring your final design. Remember, the rubric is printed for you to see how I'm grading this assignment. It's a 100-point drawing assignment. Over half your points come from how well you color and follow the pattern with the color, demonstrating value or hand pressure change or color blending.